I am studying for the New York City Department of Building Site Safety Manager exam. Part of the requirements is to familiarize yourself with all the building codes. So we have the New York City 1968 Building Code, Volume 2. And I left off with Reference Standard 6, Means of Egress. And I'm using the UpCodes website, which is very helpful. We have 18 pages, and we have Reference Standard RS6, Means of Egress. There is Reference Standard RS6-1, Photoluminescent Exit Path Markings. So it's looking for trying to get out of the building via the exits. And if you ever wanted to take the time to do this, or see what's in there but didn't want to take the time, here you go. I have exit signs, schematics showing different applications. This is looks like the strips on the staircase when you're trying to get out of the building. The rails. It's looking like you have to have a stripe on the handrails so you can see it when you're trying to get out of the building. And on the steps. The markings, different means of egress. Explanatory material. Reference Standard RS 6-1, additional standards as required by Reference Standard RS 6-1 for photoluminescent exit path markings. We have ability to wash, toxicity, UV degradation, and that is it for that section. The next one to look at is Reference Standard 7, Special Uses and Occupancies. As we can see, there are 2 pages on this one. This is Reference Standard RS7, Special Uses and Occupancies. RS71, looks like it was deleted. And Reference Standard RS7-2, Restricted Locations for Projecting Signs. And you got the different boroughs. You have Reference Standard RS73, Standard Methods of Fire Tests for Flame-Resistant Textiles and Films. And then the deleted reference RS74, and this is blank. Very easy. Moving on to 8, Reference Standard 8, Places of Assembly. We have 2 pages. Reference Standard RS8, Places of Assembly. You got our Reference Standard RS81, Motion Picture. That's what it looks like it's referencing, and it's real short. Moving on to Reference Standard 9, Loads. This one is bigger. It's got 18 pages. Reference Standard RS9 Loads, List of Reference National Standards. It's looking like for highway bridges. Reference Standard RS91, Minimum Unit Design, Dead Loads for structural purposes. Got different loads. Reference Standard RS9-2, Minimum Requirements for Uniformly Distributed and Concentrated Live Loads. Uniformly Distributed Live Loads. Doesn't that feel like it said it twice? Saying it without saying it. Concentrated Live Loads. Reference Standard 9-3, Standard Specifications for Highway Bridges. RS 94, steel railway bridges. 9-5, minimum designed wind pressures. 9-5.1, designed wind pressures on vertical surfaces. 9-2, 9-5.2, designed wind pressures on horizontal and inclined surfaces. 9-5.3, shape factors. 9-6, earthquake loads. I don't even think we've ever had an earthquake. I could be wrong. You have different tables for zone factors and site coefficients. Structural systems chart. Horizontal force factor. Fun stuff. Thankfully, I don't have to know any of it. Moving on to 10, structural work. Geez, 42 pages. This is RS 10, structural work. You got the standards. Reference standard 10-1A masonry. Looks like definitions. RS 10-1.1 material standards. 10-1.2 types of mortar permitted. 10-1.3 correction factors for HT ratio. Looks like a height ratio. Then we have 10-1.4 assumed compressive strength of masonry. So this is all about masonry and making sure it's strong. Table RS 10-1.5 allowable stresses in flexural tension and in shear allowable stresses on cross-sectional area. Make sure that shit doesn't fall down or collapse. RS 10-1.6 stress reduction factors. Go for a massage. Kidding. 10-1.7 minimum thickness of masonry. Load bearing as such, non-load bearing. Goodness gracious, it's too much stuff. Loaded content. You got 10-1B masonry. (10-2) reinforced masonry. 10-3 building code requirements for reinforced concrete. 10-4 precast concrete and pre-stressed concrete. 10-5A reference codes and standards. American Society for Testing and Materials. I've always wanted to know what the ASTM acronym, and now I know. American Welding Society, AWS. It's one of those things where you think about it, but you're too lazy to go find out what it is. Reference Standard 10-6A. Specifications for the design of cold-form stainless steel structural members. RS 10-7 standard specs for open web steel joists. RS 10-8 lumber and timber construction, working with wood. RS 10-9 plywood construction. RS 10-9.1 lowercase a allowable spans for plywood floor and proof sheathing continuous over 2 or more spans and face grain perpendicular to supports. RS 10.9.1b lowercase b allowable loads for plywood roof sheathing continuous over 2 or more spans and face grain parallel to supports. So we got parallel and perpendicular. RS 10-9.2 minimum thickness for plywood combination subfloor underlayment. RS 10-9.3 fastening schedule. Interesting. Table for RS 10-9.4 plywood siding. 10-9.5 diaphragm proportions. 10-9.6 allow shear for wind and horizontal plywood diaphragms. Are we there yet? Table RS 10-9.7 allowable shear for wind for vertical plywood diaphragms. RS 10-10A specifications for aluminum structures, allowable stress design. RS 10-10B specification for aluminum structures, load and resistance factor design of buildings and similar type structures. RS 10-11 specifications for aluminum materials. We have RS 10-12 standard specs for gypsum concrete. Interesting. RS 10-13 span tables for joists and rafters. (14) 10-14 recommended practice for evaluation of strength test results of concrete. Reference standard RS 10-15 recommended practice for shotcreting. 10-16 standard method of obtaining and testing drilled cores and sawed beams of concrete. 10-17 standard test method for compressive strength of cylindrical concrete specimens. 10-18 glued laminated timber design, manufacturing, and construction. 10-19 standard specs for gypsum sheathing board. 10-20 standard preservation treatment of lumber timbers, bridge ties, and mine ties by pressure process. RS 10-21 standard method of making and curing concrete test specimens in the lab. 10-22 standard for the preservation treatment of plywood by pressure process. RS 10-23 standard spec of the zinc coating, which is hot dip, on iron and steel hardware. Hot dip gal. It's required in subways and a lot of locations where it needs to be heavy industry. RS 10-24 tests for weight of coatings on zinc coated galvanized iron or steel articles. 10-24A specs for zinc coated parallel and helical steel wire structure strand. 10-24B, standard for zinc coated wire structural wire rope. Oh my gosh. I am not reading all this. This is all the same content regarding different hardware and concrete, masonry, steel, gypsum. It looks like the last section in this is RS 10-68, specs for flat glass. So you even have glass in here as well. Okay, this is run very long, and we're only up to standard, reference standard 10 later.